Jess, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're very happy to have you. So, first things first, why don't you tell me a little bit about your company, Long Play?
Yeah, so Longplay is a full service retention and lifecycle marketing agency for D2C ecom brands. And all that means is, we specialize in doing email, SMS, direct mail, but also overall retention strategies, customer lifecycle strategies for D2C ecom brands. So we've worked with brands anywhere from zero to 500 million in annual revenue and every kind of industry and product under the sun that you could possibly imagine. And we actually got our start in email, but now we brought it out to all the retention channels because SMS, direct mail, things like that. There's a ton of opportunities for ecom brands these days.
Cool. Well, we'll definitely dive into the email side of things a little later in the show. Can you give me a general overview of some of the services that Long Play provides or can provide to its clients?
Yeah, for sure. So most of our clients come in for full service email marketing. So really, we have D2C ecom brands come in. Typically, they have some baseline level of email marketing done, or else they typically start off with Backbone, but which is our email strategy automation tool. But they come in, we handle all of their email marketing for them. So strategy development, copywriting, design, execution, analytics, testing, literally taking the entire channel off of their plate. But what makes it a little bit different than most email agencies is that we actually have a broader focus on increasing customer lifetime value and helping you build a scalable, sustainable, profitable email channel for your business overall. So we're really looking at how email, SMS, direct mail can help a D2C ecom brand hit their business goals, whether it's increasing repurchase rate, cross-selling more products, introducing customers to new products, things like that. We also do full service SMS management, direct mail management. We have a lot of clients who come in without SMS or direct mail, and they're kind of testing that program for the first time. We'll do the setup, do the beta test for them, see if that's even a channel that makes sense for them from an ROI standpoint. And then we also do a lot of consulting around overall retention strategies, such as building a referral program, loyalty program, how to increase your customer lifetime value. And we also do some kind of more one-off projects, such as like an email program audit and strategy development and things like that for teams that have that in-house team that can execute on it. They just need a little bit more strategic direction.
Instead of kind of taking the reins on the full large-scale retention of an entire company, y'all also have the capability to just do one-offs, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, exactly. When teams have that in-house team that can execute, they just need a direction. Then those one-off projects are perfect because we kind of are that catalyst to point them in the right direction.
Sure, I think that's smart. So, according to your website, longplaybrands.com, the way in which you provide, this multitude of services, and again, these are like microservices for a longer play in retention, and they're segmented into kind of three categories: strategy, creative, and operations. So to break it down step by step, we can start with strategy. What are some of the factors and variables that you look at with a client during that initial onboard meeting?
That's a great question. So our onboarding process is actually probably one of the most thorough ones you'll probably get from an email agency, because email is meant to be a catalyst in the channel to help them grow their broader business. So we typically look at things like, obviously, the type of industry they're in, the type of products they sell, but also what their current customer lifecycle map is and where the customers are typically dropping off. And this is an area or a way of looking at their customers and their business that most of our clients are kind of being introduced to for the first time when they're working with us. So we'll map out your numbers, such as when a new customer comes in, what's your list size, but also how many of them end up converting into a purchase, or how many of them don't. How many of them stop engaging after 6 months with your emails? How many of them continue engaging? But also your customers who make a purchase, what percentage of them actually go on to make a second purchase, who actually go on to make a third purchase? How many of them upgrade to a subscription? Things like that allow us to see where most brands are kind of losing their customer base the most. So commonly with ecom brands, we find that ecom brands are really focused on increasing their repeat purchase rate, but they're focusing on getting customers to make 3, 4, 5 purchases, when in reality, most of their customers, they can't even get to making a second purchase. So that helps give us an idea of the hotspot strategy of where to focus our attention and resources. So that's an example of kind of the types of information we'll look at. We'll also look at information in terms of the probability of certain products being cross-sold together. So if someone buys product A, and we want to get them to make a second purchase, is there a higher probability of them making a second purchase if we recommend product B, C, D, E?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? So those are, again, few examples of like the type of like more granular business specific data that we'll look at when we're building a strategy. But obviously broadly, we're also looking at number of products they have, the types of products, the customers that they're speaking to, all the usual kind of marketing boxes.
No, that sounds intensive. How do you ensure that your suggestions are taken into consideration and that you and your client are on the same page? I can imagine sometimes in that initial meeting, it really is trying to build chemistry, fill each other out. I mean, does that require a lot of trust in the process, or are clients already generally receptive to trying new things because that's why they walked through the door to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our audit and strategy development, which is the process we go through before we even sign any sort of like contract or any working agreement, that process is usually an hour and a half. These days, it's almost like a 2-hour long call where we literally lay out our entire process. Here's how we operate. Here's the numbers we look at. Here are the numbers and opportunities that we're seeing for your account specifically. So I think that helps build a lot of trust in how we work, because we really believe in transparency. We really believe in communication with our partners. So there's nothing that we do that we kind of hide behind the mask of, well, these are just best practices. Like, we just know better. We always try to explain every single thought process. And then during the onboarding process, we have 2 calls that's just us asking questions, just peppering them with questions for like 90 minutes. Our team is running through all their social media accounts, their Amazon reviews, all of their behind the scenes data, and then we're developing a strategy roadmap for them. All of this is still during the onboarding process. And during that strategy roadmap, that's usually a 90 minute to 2-hour call. And that's where we get to have that collaborative space. But typically by the time we get to the strategy roadmap, we've had, 3-4 hours of calls at this point. Our team has been through all of the data. We're explaining everything that we're doing and our reasoning behind it and why we're doing it. By that point, we typically have a lot of trust with our clients. That being said, we're always the first ones to say, like, they're still the experts in their own business. It very much needs to be collaborative. We want their expert opinion, but it's our job to bring to them an idea first for them to kind of at least adjust or have suggestions from.
And then you have to have the tougher skin to be able to be okay if they're like, we're not into that. I appreciate the idea. I totally get that. So what are some of those initial suggestions that are made, maybe more generally across the board, regardless of client, or maybe any strategy that could be overlooked by a typical client?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny what you mentioned, the tough skin, because we always say with our team, especially our strategists, that like, if you're going to be in marketing, the best marketers should be itching to find out where they're wrong. Because really all of marketing is just test, get the info, and like reiterate. Like there's really no, the best marketers, it's not like billboard marketing these days where you come up with this giant campaign. There's still elements of marketing like that, but especially like digital marketing where that feedback loop is so quick, the priority with any marketer should be getting to that feedback loop as quickly as possible and just listening to the data rather than having this brilliant idea and like sticking to it. So that's a really important part of just kind of our philosophy with all this. But I'd say usually the feedback is more so around, I'd say brand and messaging is usually a lot of the feedback or suggestions, just in terms of like their vision of where they want to take things. So typically in our strategy, we'll present suggestions in terms of how a specific, set of email campaigns flows can be presented. And usually that's when they'll have different ideas in terms of like, hey, here's actually where we want our brand to be in like 2-3 years. What if we do this instead? So that's usually a big chunk of feedback. Or sometimes when they start seeing some of the creative and strategy, they'll remember like, oh no, our customers really respond really well to this type of stuff. Or what if we tried this type of idea instead? Or like, our customers usually post these types of questions. So we should adjust the type of messaging, that kind of thing, where it's very nitty gritty, day to day, like really understanding the intimacies of how your customers interact with your brand and your products. That type of information typically comes out in this like strategy development process, but it's very rarely to do with the actual like email strategy itself.
It's kind of more of that initial building the relationship more than it is kind of concocting a plan a little bit.
Exactly. And like, we're all humans. So typically with ideas, it's like when you see someone's ideas and you have more ideas versus when you tell someone to sit down for 90 minutes and tell us about your customers. You're obviously going to miss certain things and
Totally.
forget certain parts. So it's just part of that, again, iterative process.
Awesome. So on moving on to the creative side of things, is your team more adept or capable at complementing an already established brand identity or messaging campaign, or are they better at sculpting a new one?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, we have really gotten both. Typically our clients come in with, I'd say typically as in like, 75% of the time,
Okay.
clients come in with a pretty pre-established brand because they're at this point, they're usually a decently sized business. But a lot of them don't have brand books or anything like that yet. They just have, their usual website and social media and things like that they've already been working off of. And those types of clients, our team does an amazing job at kind of evolving their brand while keeping the essence of the core of it. So, and I'm not talking about like just fonts and colors and things like that, but really just around how do we present the brand and position the brand as a uniquely in the market that they're in, and like how do we speak to the customers in an intimate way that like resonates with them. Are we going to go really is it going to be intimate because it's very playful and a little bit sassy, or is it very intimate because it feels like it's a personal letter written from like a CEO, for example? So those are the ways our team really evolves the tone and voice, but also kind of the visual element of it as well. And then we get that 25% where they come in, they're like, we kind of hate everything and we're kind of just up for whatever. So, and they'll just send us some info and it's like, just revamp everything. We actually had a brand come in recently that was like, that's been around for a few years. And they're like, we were looking through all their stuff for inspo. So we're kind of summarizing like, okay, these seem to be your brand colors, this is your font, like whatever. And they're like, we actually hate our entire website. We hate our social media. We hate all of our existing emails. So that was kind of a step back of like, okay, cool. What do you like? Like, which brands are you inspired by? And then that's kind of almost like a minor rebranding exercise. And those are always really fun for our creative team, obviously, because they get to flex those kind of muscles as well.
And then you got to at least put that work into the research to know what not to do. So stay away from this in-house style at the very least. And
exactly.
Look, it sounds kind of like y'all are in the process of polishing and furnishing. That's kind of like my way of rationalizing it, is like polishing an already in-house style. But I think the being able to kind of split it up like that, maybe 75-25, is that 25% of the time your team is able to kind of like run wild a little bit and sow their oats, so then they can get back to kind of just like catering to the client's in-house style.
Exactly.
I imagine it prevents them from just kind of like, I don't know, getting boxed in a little bit in terms of playing by someone else's rules.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like with all e-com brands, are going to evolve over time. Even the biggest ones, we've worked with brands that they came at 100 million, they became $500-600 million brands, and in that course of a few years, their brand also evolved pretty significantly. So it's just part of the process. Very rarely do we see a brand come in and they just have like everything solidified and everyone's on the same page of what this looks like. And we always say like I always struggle to use the word agency for us. Because for me, like I was previously the CMO of a D2C e-com company, and Rachel Neidecker, my COO and partner along place, she used to be the COO at a D2C e-com company. So everything that we've built has been about like, if we had an in-house, like our dream in-house email team, how would they behave? How would they work? And then you get some of these funky things where it's like, hey, why is an email agency kind of doing like these minor rebranding things? It's like, well, because if you're evolving your brand and you had an in-house email team, this would be part of the process. So So that's kind of why there's certain areas that might seem a little bit out of scope from a typical email agency, but that's also kind of how we really partner with our clients to have those like long-term relationships where we can work with them for years because we're kind of evolving alongside them and the partnership as well.
Well, and I think it's a great idea because it also then shows that y'all understand that process from beginning to end. And that's kind of, the layout of this conversation is that if y'all are understanding, instead of just making something that fits your personal email campaign, then it might not be as executed. And I think people are going to take it a lot more seriously when it's personalized and it's already fitting and shaping and molding their brand messaging and identity. I think that's really creative. So how much does general aesthetic trends in graphic design, email layouts, stuff like that play a factor in developing the specific content for these brands, or is every single creative decision pretty much started from a blank slate?
That's a good question. All of our creative is done completely from scratch for each client. So we don't work off of templates or anything like that because every brand is very different. Okay. That being said, there's still best practices in terms of like basic email layouts, right? Like you want to have a call to action in the header and you want the email to be a certain length. And if you're going to do a product section, like there should be a certain level of descriptions probably. So, and we use what we call kind of email layouts or wireframes. That was kind of actually the foundation of Backbone, the software tool, as well, is having these email layouts to give kind of like a website wireframe, which like gives you that like optimized structure of the email that makes sure it's gonna actually perform from a clicks and conversion standpoint, but then from a creative standpoint, it should be from scratch because every brand is a little bit different. So that's kind of our approach to doing all the creative, but there aren't really like email design trends or anything like that these days. It's more the technical trends to kind of keep up with and technical changes, but besides that, it's all from scratch.
No, it's good to know. Moving on to the final operations side of things, part of your business model seems to be extremely data driven in terms of execution, I think is how y'all call it. What are some of the goals and metrics that you're looking specifically at to determine success with the client? I know this is kind of bringing in the strategy part where you're sitting down with them saying, this is what you want, this is what you need, or that sort of thing. So what are those specific metrics you look at?
Yes, I mean, from an email reporting standpoint, obviously we have the usual like opens click conversion rate, average order value, dollar per recipient, things like that. I'd say what we do a little bit differently is not necessarily just the KPIs that we look at, but also how we look at them. So our focus when we look at data is always around this principle of actionable reporting. And all that means is like you don't want an agency or a team that just sits down with a client. It's like, hey, we had a 30.25% open rate today, and this email generated, 3.2K. It's like, if I give you that information, is that good? Is that bad? I have no idea because it really depends on the context of the business, how last week went, right? All that information. So for us, every time we do reporting, it's always contextual, which is typically comparative data. So for example, we'll track the 6-month rolling average of every single KPI that a business has in email. So we might say on average, a campaign generates, $12,756. Was this most recent campaign below or above that 6-month average? That's a lot more interesting and useful data than just the actual dollar amount. So we look at a lot of like, was this 10% higher? Is this 10% lower? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? And then from there, if we're trending up or down, how does this information affect the next month strategy that we want to build? How do we do more of the campaigns that are working? How do we launch A/B tests on the ones that weren't performing as well? How do we identify which email flows we need to optimize based off of like what's trending up, what's trending down? So those two principles of actionable reporting, but also kind of comparative and trend analysis, those are probably the two basic pillars of how we do reporting that actually allows us to take data, turn it into information, but also turn that information into strategy as well. And that's usually that link that's missing a lot in like over reporting. It's like there's so much data. We always need more data. We need more accurate data. So I always say, like, you don't need more data. You need to learn how to take that data and turn it into information, and then you need to learn how to use that information and turn it into strategy. So that's what all of our kind of reporting dashboards are built off of.
Mm-hmm. And I like that adding context thing, because I know for someone like myself, I tend to overthink things very easily. So if it is put in better context, this could be a great, conversion rate or optimization rate or what have you. But it's all relative to the size of the company and the growth of it. So for someone like myself, I need to know it's getting better or it's getting worse. That's it, or else I can really complicate things very quickly. So I think that's a smart way to approach it, is having to put it in comparison totally over time. Or else you also have small companies that are looking at mid-sized companies thinking, oh, well, we should be here. And you're saying you're on the way there. You don't just really get there overnight. It's got to be a steady build. So my question baked in there is, how important is managing a client's expectations during this whole process?
So important. I think managing expectations, and we always say managing expectations is not necessarily lowering expectations. It's more of, let's just be realistic in terms of, here's where we're at. Are we getting better? Like, at the end of the day, and it's probably always look at account 6 month rolling average, because like you mentioned with benchmarking, it can get very funky very quickly, where you can say like, hey, we are here, but like we want, like, our average order value is like $35, but like we look at all of our competitors that are like 10 times the size of us, their average order value is like $50. Like, we need to get an average order value up to $50. It's like, yes, well, to do that, you need to do all the 500 other things in the business, like launching 3 different product lines that got that business there in the first place. And that's where they're missing that context of like, you don't get to, we can't just say we want it to be $50 and just keep pushing there, because that's when you get into all those types of like reactive tactics that eventually burn down the business. So it's more about, okay, great, we can agree on the goal. We still want to get in that direction of a $50 average order value, or whatever that high level business goal is. Are we trending in that direction? And at what point is marketing not enough to get there? Because we're always the first ones to say, like, we do an amazing job managing email, and email is going to be this beautiful channel for your ecom business. And also, it's still only one channel for your ecom business. If you only have one single product and email is doing the best job, we still cannot increase repeat purchase rate if you do not have other products to buy, right? So at some point there is a cap, and same goes for Facebook ads, same goes for any type of marketing strategy. At some point it comes back down to, is this actually feasible for your business overall? And again, that's where we kind of come in as like a little bit more of a strategic thought partner on the operations side of like, what is realistic to achieve based off like where your business is at, and like to get to the next level. Usually with ecom businesses, like, you need to start launching new product lines. You need to start tapping into retail. You need to start tapping into wholesale. You need to expand your brand, like, and who you're speaking to. Like, your market size just isn't big enough. And I find it's easy for ecom owners to sometimes get stuck on the marketing side, because marketers are always saying like, hey, we can fix this, it can be better, you just need to spend more Facebook ads, you just need
and you can't just market more all the time.
You can't just, sometimes you just run out of people to market to, or you don't have enough products to market. And all marketing is like, I'm trying to get this product in someone's hands, but if there's no product and there's no someone, then the marketing isn't going to work. So again, that's where we kind of need to take a step back and look at it more from like a CMO, COO position, which is, yes, these channels are working, but like there's still a cap to how well even this channel performing optimally may not be enough for the business to grow the way that the e-com owner needs to grow, and then we'd have other decisions made around that.
And you're really scratching the surface of something that I find really interesting, and that's, how do you know when a strategy that you've come up with, a game plan, is fundamentally flawed or not working, versus if it's just not being executed properly? How do you kind of know when to cut your ties with a strategy, or to change how it's working,
That's a good question. So I'd say That's a really good question. I'm thinking on how the best way to articulate this. So I'd say the first basis of it is we kind of approach our strategy development, but also our A/B testing specifically, kind of like website zero testing. And I think it's a very important principle overall on how to build a business. Because we use it in terms of how we build long play, we use it in how we build other companies. Like it's just more of how we think. And it's that like question, hypothesis, and execution mindset. So we're saying like, hey, we want to, I'm just using this AOV example. Hey, we want to increase our average order value up to $50. Like the question becomes like, why is it not already at $50? Oh, because customers don't really like our product, because we don't have enough things for people to buy, or maybe our customers are actually like relatively like lower income in terms of what we want them to spend, and they're just never going to be able to spend that amount of money. There's lots of different hypotheses on like why your average order value isn't $50. And then for each of those questions and hypotheses, you can then develop different strategies. So if we're saying, hey, we think our customers just won't spend that $50, it's like, okay, well, what other brands are those customers buying from? Are those brands getting a $50 average order value?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are these customers really spending money? Or maybe it's, well, customers just don't want to buy a second product. Well, it's like maybe they're just really not enjoying your product in the first place. Like your product isn't as great as you think it is. So in those ways, when we start developing multiple questions, multiple hypotheses, and then developing a strategy to execute on that, that is so thoroughly thought out that it's like if you flesh out all of that and we test each of those strategies, we get to a pretty clear conclusion where we've executed on multiple strategies. There are multiple product lines that we've tested, things like that, and it's still not working. I think there's an issue in the business model itself rather than just the marketing strategy. Because I'd say typically when it's this methodical, the cracks begin to show pretty quickly in the process, because you start seeing like, hey, we can't really find an issue in how this was executed all the way through. Like this is on brand. There's really nothing crazy that we're doing here, in terms of like the offer or anything like that. We always kind of start out with the lowest risk way to like test out the strategy. For example, if we're like, hey, we want to increase more conversions. What if we do a discounting strategy? Let's start off with the simplest discount possible. Let's see if people will even buy if discounting is the issue. If it is, then we can increase the complexity of that strategy. But I find most marketers kind of get caught up in the tactics, and that's why something won't work, and it's like, does the tactic not work or does the strategy not work?
Exactly.
But the strategy should be deeper than tactics. The strategy is the principle of like, here's a hypothesis on like why we're not where we want it to be. And if that hypothesis is proven wrong, then you still gain information of like, oh, our business just doesn't operate this way. Like our customers don't want to interact with us in this way. That is more meaningful than just Facebook ads didn't work the way we wanted to, or this creative didn't work.
And I feel like there's a lot of value.
I hope that's a clear answer. It's a very deep question. Yeah.
It is. I kind of put you on the spot there. And I think a bit of what I'm hearing you say, inside that answer is the ability to take ego and pride out of the equation and say, okay, look, maybe this hypothesis was sound, but it failed. It's not like it is a personal thing. It's like, all right, you just learned more from that failure and can move on to a different strategy or a different execution technique instead of kind of just hitting home. We tested it. It worked in testing. And so it's got to be able to be executed properly, and I think there's a lot of value in being able to take that sort of pride out of the equation. So
for sure.
Moving on to the company you've been referring to a few times, I knew we'd get to it eventually. Backbone. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Backbone is the first email strategy automation tool for a D2C e-com brand. And it was kind of built out of all the systems, methodologies, and like principles that we developed while working with D2C e-com clients at Longplay. But with Longplay, we're relatively boutique agency. We don't have like thousands of clients because we really want to create that partnership experience. And also there's always going to be brands that we can't work with. So Backbone allows e-com brands kind of access the types of methodologies and systems that we're already using for themselves, and it's kind of like a self-serve tool. So with Backbone, essentially a D2C e-com company comes in, they can plug in their, their business size, the revenue that they're generating, the types of products they sell, the industry they're in, the number of products they sell, what their email goals are, the upload, the product and collection catalogs, and Backbone will fully develop a strategic email marketing calendar for them. And what that means is it's going to recommend ideas for campaign topics based off the industry. So we might say 5 kettlebell workouts for a company who's in the fitness industry. So it gets very specific in terms of the campaign topic recommendations. It'll fully plan out promotions and product launches. So maybe you have a 4th of July sale and it's running from, July 1st to July 8th. It'll recommend the number of emails you should have for that promotion, when to send those emails, and the types of campaign ideas for those promotional emails as well. Same thing for product launches. So fully planned out email marketing calendar for them. And we always say you can do it in minutes, but really you can do it in seconds if you're really moving quickly. So it really streamlines your email marketing workflow. And then it also generates a custom email layout for each of those emails. That's what I was kind of referring to in terms of email best practices. Is it spits out a kind of like an email wireframe for each of those emails. It's already optimized for clicks and conversions, and it's also optimized for that specific email topic. So a content email is going to need a different layout than a promotional email. We'll custom build that, and then users can export that into Figma and do all the graphic design and copywriting in there. We're in beta right now. So that actually just recently launched, and we're just super excited to.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
To just get D2C e-com owners more invested in email, because I think there's so much opportunity there, but it's also sometimes very inaccessible, especially early on when you're in that awkward stage where you can't really hire an in-house email marketing manager, and agencies are a little bit more expensive as well. Backbone is just perfect for that.
So it's perfect to get you into that kind of stepping stone area.
Exactly.
I'm extremely interested in how Backbone specifically recommends these strategies and email flows and layouts that are essentially supposed to be successful. How does that work out? Is it algorithm based, AI based? What's the deal there?
Yeah, it's algorithm based right now. And we obviously have a really cool product roadmap in terms of layering some pretty intense machine learning and AI capabilities as well. So right now, it's some pretty complex algorithms around kind of aligning the industry they're in, the types of products they sell, the type of campaign it is. So again, whether it's a content email, promotional email, product launch email, and then also kind of like an adjustable email brief is what we call it, where they can say, how long do I want this email to be? How much copy do I want? How many images do I want? And are there specific things that I want to push a little bit more? Like I want a banner to push my SMS opt-ins, things like that. So it's a combination of best practices on email layout, where we have a whole library of literally thousands of modules and sections of an email. And it's kind of like building Lego, and the algorithm puts the Lego pieces together. But there's so many options that I don't even know the numbers, but I think there's 10,000, 15,000 different possible email layouts that can be generated. And the algorithm's job is obviously make sure we're generating one that is optimized and makes sense for that particular industry, type of product, campaign type.
No, that's fascinating, and I love Legos, so I'm convinced. Is this project Backbone seamlessly interwoven with your strategies at Longplay, or is it something that is more designed to empower the entrepreneur independently, separate from Longplay?
Yeah, I'd say it empowers the entrepreneur and kind of the small team at first. And again, we're in our beta stage, and there's only so much more to come. I'm just so excited about this product roadmap. So I think as Backbone gets more and more complex, we definitely can see $100 million brands using the product to empower their in-house teams as well. And at the same time, Longplay is going to get more sophisticated, right? These algorithms have been tested and developed, but our team has been tested and developed over years. So our team, and they're human. So our Longplay team is a level of sophistication higher than the tool. And we'll continue kind of that cadence. The tool will get what's more sophisticated, but our
Sure.
team will also get more sophisticated as well. And I think there'll always be a room for kind of retention lifecycle consulting and support that software is just not, the technology is not there to really automate yet.
Mhm.
So we kind of see Backbone and Longplay kind of as like that 1-2 punch. You might outgrow Backbone and come over to Longplay and need that human support, but also you might work with us at Longplay for a few years and like things are good to go, and you now have scaled out and have an in-house team, and then you need
Mhm.
Backbone to kind of empower them. So it's really just a kind of fluid 1-2 punch.
No, that's great. And that kind of leads me to my next question. It sounds like it's not now, and I don't want to fear monger or cause panic or anything like that. But is software like Backbone going to maybe eventually become the new normal in the future of, retention, growth, acceleration strategies as opposed to, your standard growth agencies? I mean, what's the long play for a company like Backbone?
For sure. So with Backbone, I mean, there's so much. We're just in the tip of the iceberg. Like to me, I see us as like the tool is already freaking amazing and people love it, but it's only like 5-10% of its capabilities.
Oh wow, cool. Okay.
So there's so much more opportunity. And I think what's going to happen with Backbone is, and like how it's going to disrupt the email agency and retention agency, is the same space as how Facebook algorithms kind of disrupt the Facebook ad industry, right? So with Facebook algorithms, like we don't really think too much about it, where we're like, yeah, it's essentially Facebook algorithms are so advanced now with, they're doing all of the bidding, they're doing all the targeting for us. Like
Mhm.
agencies ad buyers are not sitting there really selecting their audiences and like trying to hone in on that part anymore. And it's more about the creative. And same thing with email agencies, where the algorithms are streamlining the strategic thinking part of it. And like, yes, there's going to be some people where that's all of the skill sets that they have, and they might need to find a different area of marketing focus on. But also the best ones are the ones who are going to continue evolving, and then they'll
Mm.
just have the space to not be repeatedly doing the same things over and over again. You're not needing armies of people and like a VP of marketing sitting there drowning in data to try to figure out how to adjust their strategy. They're actually thinking at a higher level. It's more about clearing up bandwidth for the best people to operate at a higher level. Just like there's still incredible ad buyers out there, no matter how much Facebook algorithms and all of that continue to innovate, they just get better because now
Mhm.
the best ad buyers now just focus on creative and like how to uniquely catch the attention of their audience and figure out what's going to resonate. They're not sitting there like bidding on every single ad and things like that.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be the same thing with email, whether it's like marketing teams or email agencies as well.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And look, I heard something. I think it was last week. I can't remember what I was watching, but they essentially said that it's not like algorithms or AI will replace people, but it's more like the people who are willing to work with the algorithms and the AI will replace people who aren't willing to work with that sort of stuff.
I love that. That's a great way of phrasing it. And I think it also brings up when I think IBM had Deep Blue and like the chess like machine learning
Mhm.
like robot.
Yeah.
And this was like back in like the 1990s. And they had like obviously the robot play against the human and the robot won, but the human and robot combination beat everything. And that's what we're aiming for. Where it's like Backbone is meant to be literally the backbone of your business
Mhm.
or your agency. It is an enhancement tool, not a replacement tool. But it's really up to the human whether it's a replacement tool or not.
Exactly. And look, I also have to say, you have a real. Do you come up with these names for these companies? Because both of those are like really, really good. I'll tell you that
Thank
much.
you.
I
It's
love long play Backbone. It tells you everything that you need to very easily and efficiently.
I appreciate it. It's funny. I only get like these are like my only two good business name ideas. Like anytime anybody else tells me to come up with a name, it's terrible. And I think I literally tweeted recently where I was like, I only have two modes, which is I come up with the name on the 11th hour, and that was the same with Backbone and Long Play. Kind of came at the 11th hour. Or I also have a running list of names that are like words that are so good. Where I'm like, I'm just gonna start a business one day just so I can use this word because it's such a good word. But I'm like, if you tell me to come up with business name, it's so difficult. But yeah, I like Backbone. I like Long Play. I'm a huge fan of like the 2 syllable words as
And I
well.
feel like it's a messy idea to start with a name and then create a brand around it or something. I feel like movies do that all the time, where they come up with a name of a movie and then try to make the movie around that really cool sounding name, and it doesn't exactly work because
Yeah, you can kind of tell like they're really stretching the theme.
exactly. So before we wrap up, I always ask this final question of our guests, and that's essentially regarding the importance of work-life harmony. One of my guests earlier, very, very recently, Eric, said he liked the word harmony more than balance, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to steal that from him. In the e-commerce industry, generally, entrepreneurs are operating 24/7, 365. What are your hobbies and interests that you practice to have a more stable work-life harmony instead of just e-commerce or industry-based?
Ooh, interesting question. So I'm going to do a roundabout answer to this. So I think one of the methods, so people always think I work a lot more than I do. Because people are like, you're probably working like 120 hour week. I'm like, I'm not even anywhere close to that. It's not because I'm not working, like putting in, the work around it, but it's more so, especially as entrepreneurs, I think we're like fundamentally a little bit more creative and strategic. Like, creative and strategic should be where we're spending most of our time. And being at a desk for 80, 100 hours a week is not conducive to that creativity and strategic thinking. So I tend to kind of bucket my work into like production, which is like that's my typical 40-hour work week. I'm typically only at a desk for like 40 hours a week, because I find after that it's just a hard drop off in terms of any sort of productive capabilities. So I kind of like my production time. That's when I'm really like doing things. But I also have like my ponder list. So I have like a list of just like super high level things of just like what's the general direction of like the technology that we kind of want to explore for Backbone, or like how might our culture for Backbone as a company, as a software company, be different than our culture for Long Play. Those are very like vague, esoteric-y kind of questions that are super important to the growth of the business, and I think is the core job of a CEO. But it's not something you can just sit down. Like, you're not going to get good answers just sitting down at a laptop going like, I want to map out the culture of these two companies now, right?
Exactly.
So those are the things where it's like in my subconscious, plant in the back of my head. Then I can go out and do my normal life things with friends. That's like it's there, and then like conversations might start triggering it. And then sometimes I just have kind of like my bullet list of like things I can do on my phone, and like I'll just be going for a walk and like think on a specific question of like what's the strategy for like this particular marketing tactic that we want to do, and that's something I can like go on a walk for and like write notes on my phone and send it off to my team. And I think that way of looking at work is really important to creating that harmony, because at the end of the day, like you can strive for all of the work-life balance, but if you're at your desk for 120 hours a week, doesn't matter what hobbies you have outside and things like that, and like what wellness tactics you have, it's just you don't have enough time to do all of that. And I think it's more about how do you create that space every hour where there's a little bit of life, there's a little bit of work stuff, and also limiting that desk time. Like I think that desk time is just not, you need it because we should always be producing, but as a CEO and like a founder entrepreneur, your best work is going to come from like being out in the world and like seeing things, not necessarily being in a little bubble. So that wasn't a direct answer to your question, but that's probably one of the most important ways I kind of like
I don't know if I've
balance.
necessarily heard that answer before, and it reminds me of Jack Donaghy from the show 30 Rock. I don't know if you're familiar with it. He calls it the shower principle, where essentially, he's like putting in his office or something, and he's like, I'm working. It's called the shower principle. It's like your solution to something that you're working on comes in those moments when you're not actively working on it, where you're actually it's in that subconscious back part of your head while you're doing something else. And then like when you're taking a shower, you kind of have that like aha moment, instead of sitting down actively trying to solve a problem. So that's kind of what I'm hearing you say a little bit, Jess.
No, 100%.
You often practice the shower principle in terms of looking for those aha moments.
Yeah, because every entrepreneur is always like, "Oh, my best ideas come at the gym or like the walking or whatever." And it's like, okay, cool. Then you need more of that. Like, you don't need one walk a day. You need to like have that like open freedom like regularly
Yeah.
as like a good chunk of your day. So how do you create a day where you have that most of that in a good chunk of your day, and then you have a specific period that's for production time? So it's kind of like
Hmm.
flipping it. Um, and then I also differentiate between like input and output periods of my life. Like I have periods where I'm like not really outputting much and it's like not very effective even if I try to force myself. And like I'm like, oh, I'm in an input period, which is like just ingesting all types of information, like I'm like reading books, reading articles, listening to podcasts, talking to people. That's really just like, let's get some like stuff in here to play in my brain to like play around with and just like see what comes out and like throw everything in the
Hmm.
pot. And there's output periods where I'm like, holy crap, I cannot stop producing. Like too many ideas. I just got to get it out of me. So I think with work life, I love the term work life harmony because it's really about the flowy. Like some periods are going to be more input and you're not really going to be creating much, and then vice versa. There's going to be some periods where you're just creating and you're not really learning anything new, but that's important too. And there's going to be some periods where you just need to ponder on these subconscious areas and you're not even at your desk for like the whole day. You're just kind of like
Hmm.
going about your life. And then some days where I'm like, I also have weeks where I'm working 80, 100 hours because that's just a production period. So I think that part's important to like remember that life isn't this like daily routine thing that is consistent every single day for the rest of your life. That's not really what like harmony really is.
Absolutely.
I could go on about this. I used to work for a productivity tools company, so I have so many thoughts
So
on
you've got some
all of
thoughts. Well,
this.
they're extremely insightful. I really appreciate your time joining us on the show, Jess, and good luck to Long Play and Backbone. I think with names like that, they're definitely determined to be successful. So thanks again, Jess.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.